guys, I'm so excited. I have one of my best good friends, Larry, on with us today. And I told you guys I would be having him on this week, and it's here he is. He's with us.
Lauren, it's so awesome to get to gather with you again. And I just want to say something that's kind of funny. We have never met. This is probably only the 15th. I was trying to count them. I really had a great time talking to you and Sean just, I think, a month ago. And it was really fun to be on there. And sometimes your boys, bounce in, but people would be shocked that we've really never met each other. And I think we'll meet when we do the cruise, but it's really great to be invited back on your show. And I've been peeking at your episodes and it's fun to watch. So thanks for inviting me back.
Yeah, two of my favorite guests are you and Terry Saka. They love to hear about you. And when you come on, honestly, they hope that you talk about the dinar. For some reason, they love to hear that from you. So we'll get into that later on because as you guys know, Larry is full of wisdom on that. And that's just like a prophetic little vein that the Lord has given him. So we'll do that. But hey, before we go into all of that, I've got to ask you the buzzword of this week. Netanyahu just met with Trump. And what do you think about this whole prophetic thing that just happened with Trump taking Gaza? What is your first thought about this?
Well, I've actually got a crazy conspiracy. Do I need to go to the kitchen and get my tinfoil hat out and tell you? But I almost guarantee you, Lauren, I'm right on this. So can I give you a theory that I think that you'll agree to? I've never heard anybody else say
Let's
this.
say it.
Okay. But, it sounds crazy. I'm like, well, I'm going to take the liberty to do kind of a little bit longer answer. Okay.
Okay.
Is that okay?
No,
I
yes,
mean,
let's go ahead. We got plenty of time.
well, Donald, if you looked up on my shelf up there, there's a bunch of Donald Trump books. I think I've got every one that he's been associated with. And so The Art of the Deal is a fantastic read if you've never read it. And what we're witnessing is the art of the deal. And on my channel, my dogs are coming in to visit me. Luckily, they're not like 160-pound people that have 160-pound dogs, but my wife, I told her, yeah, I love your dog, but um, my wife's not feeling very good today, and I said, "You just have one job. Please don't let the dogs come in when I'm talking to Lauren." And the dogs started marching in, so she's freaking out over there. Anyway, what I really believe we witnessed with Canada and Mexico was the art of the deal. It's just ridiculous what we just saw, and what we're just seeing in with it is the art of the deal again. And he totally, I mean, I think he caught Netanyahu so sideways. And, the way that we've been led as a country, it's a logical word called the a Hegelian dialectic. Have you heard of that word
No,
before?
no.
It's how governments effectively rule. They create a problem
Mhm.
and then they create two solutions,
Oh,
a really
yes.
bad one and a really good one. And so I believe that Trump just threw Netanyahu kind of sideways. And I'm going to say this prophetically, not personally prophetically. I'm trying to understand my role. I think I understand what Kim Clement said far more than most people. I'm not Danae Clement or anything like that, but I know things about that Kim said financially. And I would like to read in a few minutes a prophecy about Netanyahu that I think is shocking. But
Okay.
I believe that Netanyahu has been God's person, especially during his first term, because he was in and then he was out for a while. And I think that we can look back over some presidents that we thought were called of God to do it. And then I think they get compromised. And I think that Israel, we can agree, is God's chosen nation. But the leadership can be compromised because of various things. And I don't think everything about Netanyahu is amazing.
Mhm.
And I came across the most shocking prophecy about him, and I would like to read it. And
Yeah.
then I don't know that I really answered your question,
No,
but I
you
think,
are. I wanted to get your your thought on this, and I know that people watching they're Now they want to hear it. What do you have? Let us know.
Well, this is a prophecy, and it also applies so clearly to the book we wrote together, the Kingdom Billionaire book. Th This is from January 19th, 2006. So it's from 19 years ago, 2 weeks ago, 19 years. And I'm just going to read a little extra, and you feel free to trim it down. But it's interesting where Kim Clement is describing what's going to happen in the church because the church right now is currently split.
Mhm.
And he's talking into the future, but this is the short-term future, and you're going to see why. So this is about a paragraph, but I'll try to read it well. The Spirit of God says strange things are beginning to happen when there's a unity in the building. Unity is two becoming one, so that one can become two. And this is the power that is present, says the Spirit of the Lord. This is the power that has taken over my people from the beginning of time. And I said, oh, well, I'm going to kind of skip that. You you will certainly, okay, multiply, God said, for you will certainly subdue the earth. You will certainly have dominion. You will certainly know that God is going to do something unusual. Alas, some will say, what about Israel and a leader? What about it? There shall there shall be an investigation, says the Lord. Something is not right. Something smells fishy, they say. But he had a stroke. And I don't know of any Israeli leaders that have died of a stroke. Do you?
No,
In the last 15 years.
not that I know of.
So Kim Clement's saying something smells fishy. They will say he had a stroke. The Spirit of God says, I will raise up a younger leader for Israel. And they will say, can he do it? And God said, there's an unusual thing that I will begin to do in Israel. They will say, but we speak of America. And listen to how Kim Clement describes America. We speak of a nation that worships the Messiah. I mean, we did not, in my opinion, worship the Messiah even a month ago. But I think our country is turned so sharp right. I mean, we are beginning to have a fear of God. And the Spirit of God said, from a Jew came Christianity. And then in the beginning, God said, it shall end when the Jewish people proclaim the Christ on earth, says the Spirit of God. And this is an unusual thing that I will do. So the way that I understand that, and you may keep it or you may not keep it in your show, but I think that, and you might go, well, Kim Clement said all kinds of things. Why do you think that you're talking about Netanyahu? But I think that the context of this didn't make sense when he said it. Like so many things, Kim Clement was speaking to the current people about a future time. I think that we're in that future time. And he goes right into where we're going as a nation very clearly to me. The rest of this next paragraph is absolutely where we're headed because in the book, The Kingdom Billionaires, um, I talked a lot about his prophecy of the Big E, and I think the Big E is right around the corner. And I talked about it was going to come in February and be clearly revealed in March. And so this next prophecy. So I don't know that I really answered your question about Netanyahu, but I don't think that Netanyahu is without his foibles. And I don't know if he's going to be innocent enough to take Israel to where they're going. I totally confirm that Kim Clement and other prophets have said that Netanyahu has been used of God. But I wonder, and if this is wrong, it's not that Kim Clement's wrong. It's just that I could be applying it wrong. But Kim Clement is talking about as the church comes into a time of unity, there's going to be a leader in Israel that dies mysteriously, and he's replaced by a younger one that I can use. And as the church comes into unity, so let's see
I
if
wonder
this,
if, because you know how most prophecies have a tinge of subjectivity to it, as in like, this is what's coming. If we pray a certain way or something, maybe some things can be averted. If
right.
some things just can't be, it's just biblical. That's just the way it is. It's coming. And I'm wondering, that's interesting, that prophecy, Larry, because what if that a shaking happens to where BB, this prophecy ends up being about BB, and the younger one comes in, and America has now taken occupancy of Gaza, And this new one that comes in, they're able to make better deals, or I don't know, something's happening
Well,
to where
let,
BB was out because he was infiltrated.
well, let me ask you this question. What if a Messianic Jew secretly was brought in as a leader of Israel?
Whoa.
God has brought in a Messianic Jew as our president. I believe that Trump has Jewish heritage. I mean,
Yes. Well, look
I
at Jared. He's surrounded by Jews. I mean, his
yeah,
son-in-law is a Jew.
yeah. Well, I think he's a Jew. I mean, I'm not saying that I know that
You
he
mean
is.
bloodline wise? Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
do.
yeah.
I do believe that he is. And I
Wow.
think I'm not saying that, I'm not saying that I know this. I'm just saying Netanyahu is a man that has been used of God, that is a flawed man, that has
Mhm.
totally been used of God. If something happened to him, I believe that God has got it and he's going to use a less flawed man or a new man. And I think with Trump, we've got a new man. He is not the same man. It's
Oh,
shocking. And I I have just a quick thing to say about that. It might be kind of funny to see your opinion. I just spoke about how when Kim Clement and other people have talked about it, this is a plan. It's an amazing plan that God, has for America, and it's beginning to be revealed. And so I have a crazy. So I didn't make it super clear on my channel, but I'm going to say another crazy conspiracy theory, and you can
tell
just
us.
laugh. And
We love it. Let's go.
okay, so I think that Donald Trump knew that he was going to lose 2020. And I mean he won and he shocked the cheating machine in 2016 when he came in. But I think he knew he was going to lose. And I don't think they've been sitting on their laurels. And I believe that there are leadership at the highest level, including Space Force that he initiated, and they've been doing their homework, Lauren, in my opinion. It is impossible to do what we're being told. And so people have made this crazy thing, and I don't like it. But watch the movie, enjoy the movie. They say enjoy the show. Well, you can't tell me that Doge is going this fast. These first 2.5 weeks have been planned, Lauren, for years.
I agree. I think he's been planning this for 4 years.
Yeah.
I
Oh,
think that
I
he has
think
had plenty of time to assemble all of this.
And I think it might even be a part of a bigger plan than that. I think that
Mhm.
and I'm not trying to go like they call it the rabbit hole. I'm just saying that this is so much fun to watch. It's so shocking, but it's literally impossible. Only God could do it, but we're all believing it. And I think that we're seeing he's basically using, to go back to that Hegelian dialectic, that's what COVID was, in my opinion. It's like, hey, you've got a huge problem. You can either die and not take this, or you can take this. And so many people out of fear,
Yeah,
chose to do it. And
yeah,
I didn't choose to do it, and
me
I was
neither.
super vocal, and I literally almost got arrested. And that's another long story,
Well,
but
ugh, I was going to say I got fired, but I didn't get fired for the COVID. I got fired for the flu shot, which was a prerequisite for what they were planning to do globally. But my answer was still going to be no. My answer's no. It's always been no, and I
right,
don't have to give you an answer why. And then you almost got arrested. That's because, guys, he's in Washington. He's in a very liberal
that's
state.
right. I I am, but I just when you said that, I just had kind of I'm just going to speak this. You know, people have done horrible things to us, just like they've done to Donald Trump, and we can all relate as we watch um, somebody when they're inappropriately treated, especially by people in authority, and they smash you down, you
Yeah.
know. But what we're seeing is a prophetic encouragement for those who have been smashed from people in authority over you. That God is going to have the last say.
Yeah,
That your story, wherever your story looks like it's headed, it could look like you're in legal trouble, it could look like you're in financial trouble, could look like your marriage is done, your finances are a wreck, your kids hate you, you're your kids and you hate your parents, and your parents are so stupid. I've been a stupid parent successfully for 30 years almost, so but my kids, now that they're approaching 30, they think I'm starting to get to be a little bit smarter. But the thing is, the last chapter of that book is not been written yet, Lauren, and we both know how painful it can be to get to that last chapter. But there's encouragement because other people can write really bad chapters for us. But I just want to say, look at what God's done with our country, and, he's doing the same thing in your lives. And even though your life could totally be a mess right now, God has not forgotten you. And, there's good days ahead, I will tell you.
well, he always comes through. I mean, that's what I
Yeah.
always tell my platform. He always comes through. So you
But
don't have to
but
worry about it.
he's let me go so far down slippery, muddy, filthy roads, so much farther than I wanted to go, and so much farther than I thought I could endure. But he did come through. But I didn't want to. I thought the trip might be a bad trip for 3 months. It ended up being 6 years of really difficult time. So it's easy to say, hey, he's going to come through if you've only been going through 3 months of
True.
bad times. What if you 13 years into a bad marriage, that you thought God told you to do? What do you do with that? So there's people that are losing their house, or realizing they're going to begin to lose their house,
That's
now,
true.
because times are difficult. But keep going. I'm sorry.
Well, that would be a great segue into what we think how the economy is going to do through the spring and summer. What do you think? Like, how fast do you think that this plane is going to crash for him to try to bring it back up? Or, what are you thinking about
Well,
this?
that's such an interesting question. And to be honest, I'll tell you, the guy I watch, it's my hobby to watch prophetic people. And there's a guy named Giles, and I don't think everybody needs to watch everybody, um, but he has a very explicit series of years that America's going to go through a difficult time. And, Brandon has said there's going to be 4 years of difficulty. So, but we were talking before we got started, there's the great and terrible day of the Lord. And there's a different story for different people.
Right.
Lauren, you and I that are prepared, and the people that study with you, and the people that, are hearing God's encouragement, and people who are prepared. I think it's going to be a little bit like the 10 virgins. Some people who are prepared and working are going to do just fine. Other people who right now are way above us financially and in every other way, they're going to be absolutely devastated.
Yeah.
And so, you know I think people who only rely on the stock market, and maybe they're not working. They just maybe have a super healthy stock portfolio and they live off that, and they've made no other preparation.
Hmm.
I could see they could be absolutely decimated, you know, and I think God will take care of them if they lean into it. But I'm talking about maybe they're a secular, rich, traditional liberal,
Yeah, the
that doesn't really
traditional
care
way of
about
living. They've got their asset tied up in a home. They have a nice car. They do 2 vacations a year.
that
I think they're in
They
trouble.
they have four nice cars. They
There
live
you
in
go.
Buck. Isn't Buckwood the real fancy part of? Is it what
Buckhead. Buckhead.
Buckhead? Yeah. So there's going to be I predict that what's going to happen, even in the elite places of Atlanta, the elite places of Washington and Seattle, are like Bellevue. I think that some of the most elite areas of our state, uh, Bill Gates lives just on the elite's corner of Bellevue
Oh.
is one way you could say. And so he lives in the most elite neighborhood in the middle of a lake. It's called Medina. Medina is where he lives, but it's real close to Bellevue. I think that many people that are worth hundreds of millions on this street that he lives on. Jeff Bezos used to live there before he moved, but um, I think that so many really rich people are going to not have access to their money. And if they don't have access to it, I have friends that really invest in Vanguard and they've done so well over so many years, but they didn't know how dark of a company that was. And Lauren, what happens if godly people use the devil's instruments? Because we didn't know that BlackRock, State Street, and Vanguard were
Hmm.
illicit, ungodly companies 5 years ago. But
Hmm.
now we know. So what if you've got all your money? My friend's got millions in Vanguard and he
Wow.
likes it and he's made so much money. He's got millions of dollars. And what do you think's going to happen in the next 3 months to somebody who's got millions of dollars in Vanguard, even though they're a believing Christian? What's going to happen to it?
I just think it's a bad idea. I just think that's probably not very wise, being the fact that the Lord is uncovering all of these dark, things and using Trump to do it. I don't think that's probably very safe, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I guess, I've got three different conspiracy theories cooking now, but I just see um it's I think Larry Fink, who is the head of BlackRock, and then they've spawned off this company called Blackstone, and then they have friends, State Street and Vanguard. Those are all cabal companies that use our money. And, I mean, I'm just going to go there just for a
Go ahead,
second, just to
go there.
say they, the thing that's so interesting, I've actually got friends who've sold companies to private equity. And so these friends they might be worth $100 million. I don't know. I know it's really close if it doesn't exceed 100 million because they had huge companies and so, but public companies like Walmart and different places like that. If you look at where BlackRock is invested, they're the major stockholder of almost every company. And I think, well, you would choose either Pepsi or Coke, right? If you were gonna invest in one. You wouldn't invest in both of them equally, would you? And yet they do.
Right.
They're majority holders. They may own 8% of Coke and maybe 12% of Pepsi, and yet they don't favor one over the other. You know why they do that?
They're just engulfing the entire market, right?
Well, they want to influence the board.
Okay.
They when you have when you're the board and you get paid tremendous amounts of money in a publicly traded company, and then you have your major shareholder and they've got a view, hey, I'm just going to throw this out here. Chick-fil-A, I think, is privately held, company, but let's just say it wasn't, and let's just say that BlackRock bought into Chick-fil-A, and it's like, hey, Chick-fil-A, you don't have a history of opening your stores on Sunday, right? We don't have Chick-fil-A, but aren't they closed on Sunday?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, BlackRock comes into and says, you know what? We're 12%, 15% investor in Chick-fil-A now. And that was really nice for the old days, but come on, this 2025 now, you need to be open on Sunday. And we need some commercials with some LGBTQ.
Hmm.
L-
Hmm.
Uh, you know, and
So they
why do
get to
they
come
have the
in
right
and
to
call the
do that?
shots. Yeah.
Yeah, they buy the stock so that they have the right to influence the board to do what they wanted to do. They don't have to do anything. You don't need to eat the whole apple. You just need to take a bite or at least take a picture. Let us take a picture of you biting the apple because you need to do things differently. And it's a small thing. It's just a small thing,
So
but it
basically
eventually turns in.
they're buying influence. They're buying
Right. That
influence.
that
Yeah.
that is exactly what they're doing. And so what the crazy thing is, Lauren, this machine that we're in is that we've got a whole Babylonian financial system that the government, which is bought, is making us say, hey, your 401k um, and and your retirement funds, you can't do with them what you want. You have to do what we say. So
Mhm.
you've got to invest them in the stock market. You can't easily put them in crypto. You can't control it.
Mhm.
You can't pull it out. You got to pay huge fees. So you've got to put it with these illicit companies, and they're going to then those companies, it's like they have all this money in a barrel and they get to just take all our money. But then it gets worse because there's huge pension funds and stuff like that. And like, firemen have pension funds and police and um, different states have pension funds. And these government entities allow BlackRock and Blackstone, Vanguard to go in and utilize these huge pension funds. They're using our money, Lauren, to then buy stock to influence. And I'm going to say a word some don't like. They're bastardizing the values of our country with our own money.
With
And
our
so,
own money. Oh my gosh, I didn't even think about that. With the
so
401ks and the pensions and all that.
right. So we're going to see God has to take this down. It's Jezebel, it's Babylon, it's absolutely horrendous. They're using our resources against us. So I don't want to create fear. I just want to say, you can't control what your pension funds do to a degree. So I don't want to create fear. I'm telling you that God's got this. But if you're a Christian, in my opinion, and I've had very candid conversations, I've confronted my friend. I said, I'm not going to say his name. You've got millions of dollars with Vanguard. I used to think that he goes, Larry, I've got a 20-year track record with them. They've literally helped me make millions of dollars. And I said, but they're a horrible company. They've got such a nice, pretty name. I mean, Larry Fink is a very nice looking, sophisticated man. He looks a little bit like my age, a little bit older, I think, but super healthy looking guy for, being an elite leader of a multi-trillionaire asseted company. And yet, they're using our money against us and they're going to try to keep it all. And so I don't think that God's plan is going to allow them to be in the system. And that's why, and I think it's so interesting, Lauren, in our circle, the wealth transfer community, we believe that Proverbs 13:22, the wealth of the wicked has been stored up for the righteous. But there's really, and I don't want to get in on smashing people, but why is the church not informed that we're about ready to have, in my opinion, an economic crash? You've had dreams. I've had dreams that it's going to happen, but it's weird. It's hard to keep beating the drum when it'd be easier just to be nice and say, well, we got the Trump effect, no more worries. It's going to be fine. But when you know that, it's got to go down. God's going to pull the plug and I mean, what do you think of all that?
Yeah, look, we were talking a little bit, guys, before we hit record. Larry, you and I were saying the pastors are not understanding. I don't think it's just
And we're not
un
calling them out. We're not
no.
judging them.
Not at all. We're just in the end times. It's a totally different situation. Like you brought up, we talked about, it's the great and terrible day of the Lord. There is no middle. It's either great or terrible. And I don't think that the pastors understand the severity of what we're going through for the transition to bring in this billion soul harvest or this harvest of people before Jesus returns. And I think we're going through that course correction. It's going to be very difficult on the people who didn't prepare. You
Well,
know,
yeah. Well, I just gonna say I'm not a board member at my church. I don't think I should be unless they really, really wanted me, but they wouldn't necessarily really want me, even though I go to a great church because I'm kind of an opinionated. But I've had kind of intense conversations with the leadership, and I don't go to a huge church. I go to a really good church, and they have they're very lean and they're very wise, and they've literally got more than a year's worth of resources saved up. I mean, it's like they're really wise because they don't pay themselves overly
that's good.
large.
Yeah.
They have lean thing. But I said, have you considered, you know, precious metals to preserve, these few $100,000 that we've got in the bank? Do you? No, we just like to save, and it's good. And I'm like, well, I
No.
really feel like you're going to regret it. And so I just feel bad. I don't, again, want to create fear. Um, but it's a weird thing. I don't know what what's going to happen. I don't think what I think is going to happen is I think when this happens, not every bank is going to fail. I don't believe
Mm-mm.
every bank is going to fail. I do think many banks will fail, but I do think that there's going to be churches either well-intentioned or they could be like the bishop up in the Washington Cathedral, who just made such an embarrassment for herself. The funds in institutions like that may be
Gone.
disappear as well.
Mhm.
So there's going to be good people. Lauren, that's the sad thing. There's going to be very well-intended, good, godly people who are going to endure this from a very rough perspective. Like, the 10 virgins, I mean, I'm kind of in a sense misapplying the story intentionally, but it doesn't say that five were righteous and five were lazy. It's
Mhm.
just that five were prepared and five weren't. They were all probably great girls, but
Yeah.
five were prepared, five weren't.
Or you
There's
could
going to
just
be,
say five had strategy and the
yeah.
other five just had, oh, I can't wait to see the groom. There was no
And
strategy.
And five were aware that maybe this could go on all night. I better be prepared. And the
Yeah.
others were like, well, it's going to happen. I mean, but in that Eastern mindset, weddings didn't happen at 5:30 p.m.
Yeah.
sharp. It happened when, uh,
The groom
um,
showed up. Yeah.
yeah. And so wise bridegrooms were prepared. And so it's not going to go even the way that the most insightful people think. That's the crazy thing. You ask in insightful prophetic people what's going to happen. They don't know. And what I think is funny, Lauren, and I mean, I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but the most prophetic people are we've both had extreme prophetic encounters. It's like having a laser and seeing 1% slice. You don't get to have perspective. It's like seeing a picture of the inside of a loaf of bread. You don't really want to see the the way that the loaf looks and the little air bubbles inside the loaf. You want to know the whole thing and the future of the bread.
Yeah.
All you see a weird slice from the way
Yes.
that God shows it to you.
Yes.
And so they don't get to choose the slice. The slice is revealed to them and they speak the best way that they can. But what's funny, isn't it funny how often the most gifted prophetic people often are the least interested and thus skilled with money? The reason that you're
Yeah.
so good with money, you're very interested in it. It's probably almost a problem at times, at least it has been for me. So much of my life, I'm overly consumed with finances. Yet, Lauren, I want to encourage you, some of the prophetic community who are really called to prayer. I got to get, I don't know where my lens is here. Um, some of the most prophetic people are called to prayer and intercession. And I think that we need to be a part of that. But Lauren, you are called, in my observation and in my opinion, and I want to say, you are called and anointed by God to influence and lead other godly people down a path towards, wealth and kingdom development.
Mhm.
And if we're seeing the importance of the kingdom being deployed in government. And look at what God has done with Trump in the last 2.5 weeks. And yet, so many people and leadership in the church are saying, oh, really, Lauren, it doesn't matter about politics. God's got this, right? Who's going to tell me that it really matters if Christians get involved in politics? Does that fly anymore?
No, because look what happened because we didn't get involved. Everything hit the fan. It's because all of the church went inside those walls and never came out. And
Right.
then the whole world went into, crap in a handbasket because there was no Christians anywhere leading anything. And,
Yeah.
that just is not good. It didn't work.
Let me read if you would, and I'm gonna give you this so that you could show it. I'm gonna have to you could show this. This is
Yeah, I'll
from,
splice it in.
yeah. And I'm just gonna explain it real quick. All the resources from Kim Clement, you can go to kimclement.com, but it takes you to houseofdestiny.org, which is where hundreds and hundreds of Kim Clement's prophecies, and I don't equate these with scripture. I think they are what they are. They were prophetic, God-given words that are important and should have been preserved. And so the Clement family has preserved them, and you can access them. And that's where, I read them, and you go to that, and then you go to the about section, and then you go to the database, and then you can just enter one or two or four words, and it will do a search on those. And so I was doing a search, and I'm kind of changing the subject, but you can kind of grab onto this. I I know that I think I watched you say that Trump is do you think that Trump is going to do the income tax in the future, or do
Yeah,
you think he's
I do because we're broke, and I feel like he's going to grab at anything to get us out of it.
so what I have learned, and um one of the crazy things that Kim Clement makes so clear, there's going to be debt forgiveness. And
Wow.
that's just shocking, and it hardly makes sense. But what also is interesting is that he talks about there's going to be a deficit until, and I write about it in the book, until the big E comes along. And this is the month, um, Lauren, that the big E is going to begin to be revealed toward the end of this month, and then next month it will be very clear what it is. We still don't know. There's five different versions of the big E, but listen to this, and this is again, this is from January 19th, 2006. But this talks about those who have prepared. Listen, I mean, this is for the people that are following you, and I believe that they follow me. Let the, this is toward the end of that prophecy. Let it be known to you, says the Spirit of God, even as you've gathered together tonight, and I have promised this nation multiplication to where the deficit will be cleared. Now, listen, we have almost 100 trillion of debt, but then we have a problem because our government keeps overspending, and so that's the deficit. A debt is not a deficit. A deficit is an annual, you know, how much less cash flow than what you spend is what your deficit is.
Hmm.
So I have promised this nation multiplication to where the deficit will be cleared, because there's a new energy source that is coming, and that shall come forth very rapidly in the next few months, says the Lord. And I will take men and women that have been waiting and sowing, and I will cause them to become millionaires and billionaires in very short period of time. Lauren, we should write a book about this. It's
There's so much to
millionaire,
talk about.
millionaires and billionaires in a very short period of time. For surely the Lord says there's also a season that must come upon my people, the righteous, who have diligently sown, and they have dug and they have dug, and they have said, we have prepared ourselves with ditches, for from Edom shall come the provisions of what you need. Edom were the people, I believe, of Esau. They were not the righteous people in the world.
Hmm.
But Kim Clement is saying, for from Edom shall your provision that you need come. For the water shall not come from the clouds, neither from the water from the wind, but the water will come from a place where you least expect it. For God said, one who sent his ships to Edom to get gold was Solomon, and the ships returned with gold in them. And the Spirit of God says, but another, Jehoshaphat, allied himself with the sons of Jezebel and the son of Ahab, and therefore his ships were broken and could not go and get gold. For the Spirit of God says, what I tell you tonight is this: beware who you have alliances with. Watch who you are yoked with. For in these next few months, I will make opportunities for you to invest. And God said, I will give great wisdom. And yes, the Spirit of God says, the people will have an opportunity, for they have sent their ships. And Lorna, I know that you have a number of ships, and you're directing other people how to load their ships. And many people are getting frustrated, and they're getting like, God, I thought you told me. I had this impression. I heard clearly, and yet the ships haven't come back yet, God. But God said, I'm going to fill the ships with gold, and the gold will not come from Jerusalem, but it will come from Edom. It's not going to come from the place of godly locations. It's going to come from the place of the unrighteous. It's going to come from Edom, stored up by the unrighteous to be placed into the bosom of the righteous. And I prophesy prosperity. And so I just think it's interesting that what that is directly before the other prophecy I just read. That's why I don't you think that's a timely word for right now? And that's why I think that
My
other word
gosh,
for Israel is for right now.
I can't believe you just read that because I just did. I don't know when you guys are watching this, but I just did today before Larry's interview live where I brought up Jehoshaphat and his horrible decision to ally with Ahab's crew, sons, and therefore his ships were destroyed. And I said, make sure you be careful who you connect yourself with. And you just read that prophecy. It's so timely. Like that's not a coincidence.
No, I did not know that. I did not know. I watched part of that show, but I didn't get to watch the whole thing. And so I
You
did
would
see
be
part of it.
stunned that you just read that and I said that in there. Anyway, yes, it's totally true. So we're in that time. I think everyone needs to be so super serious about it. You really need to be, hearing the word of the Lord for yourself and making sure that your ears are turned to the right people and not the wrong people. They can easily lead you the wrong way. I mean, it does matter who you're listening to. It does matter who you're watching because this whole thing is about strategy and what the Lord is using the wise virgins, pointing them in the right way of strategy, where there's a whole sect of Christians who aren't so wise and they're going this way and they don't realize it.
Well, so can you let me give freedom and you can cut me off and say, "Hey, we're going this other way." But I have a real interesting question for you that nobody's asking this question,
Okay.
Lauren. There's so many people who follow you who are going to come into so many millions of dollars. How, and you've got two um, boys that I see occasionally in the videos, right? So, and you've got this monster dog, but you've got good looking boys. And I'm going to put you on the spot, but this is a question that is so hard to answer, Lauren. And it's not like you can fully understand what to do. But we need, Christian Americans, Western Christians don't have a kingdom value of moving money to future generations. Yet we, of all people, are called to intergenerational wealth. And so we do need to be praying. We need to have insight. But what do you think that you can do even now to begin to plant the seeds? And how do you let your kids fail? Or are you a helicopter parent? I'm not, you don't have to answer this yet, but so many people tend to be helicopter parents and don't let their younger children really have a say. And so hardly anybody does a great job of getting money to the next generation. Um, and so what do you do? What I wrestle with it, and my kids have already moved out. My problem is my kids have become so successful they don't need to come back to dad's company.
That's
I would
good.
love for them to come back, but they do too well. And so they don't want to. It's hard to work with family. So what is it for you as a much younger person than me? You've still got boys at home. How do you train them to be future multimillionaires?
Well, my husband and I have started very early with them. I mean, obviously, they hear everything I preach. Usually, Knox is running the camera. We homeschool the kids now. We didn't, and that's new for the past 2 years. But where we train our boys is like, for instance, the boys, instead of reading, um, things that are easy for them to read just for the sake of reading, they read The Art of the Deal. They've read Trump's books. Their little ones reading, I give them a bunch of history, like American Revolution books. And Knox, my oldest son, has read almost all the Trump books. And so he'll come to me and say, Mom, do you think this is a good cash flowing deal? Or Mom, what can I do for cash flow? Or how much silver do you think I could put in my safe and cash flow? Like their minds are already thinking about it. And when we are involving them, we involve them in the ministry. So when, everything that I do, the Rev 22, trying to buy cash flow properties, I bring the kids in and I say, look, this is a ministry, but this is a family ministry. At any time, if the Lord calls you guys to go do something else, mommy and daddy will support you off and you go do what the Lord's called you to do. In the meantime, this is what the Lord has asked this family to do. And let's steward his kingdom with the best wisdom and the best revelation we can for other people. We just constantly just keep throwing it at them, throwing it at them. All right. Or if they make a bad choice, I'll say to them, now you worked this many days. Okay, for example, my oldest son, Larry, runs the cameras at our church. He helps run the cameras at the church. And because of that, he gets a little check. And so he saved up all of his money and he bought himself a GoPro. And I asked him, I said, well, honey, why did you spend $400? It took you almost, 4 months to get this much. Why did you spend it all on a GoPro? And he said, well, mom, I felt like that this tool, this piece of equipment could make me money, could cash flow because I could start doing all of these little videos on YouTube. And I said, you got it. You're getting it. You're getting it. You bought
Yeah.
something expensive that was going to produce something else. So we just go through those kind of things.
I think that's an excellent example. I got a 30-second response to it, let you respond, and then I'll let you do whatever you do. You know what's so interesting about that? In the story of the prodigal, which we always tell, who was the father in the prodigal?
He's Jesus. He's God. He's the
Yeah.
Father.
And he allowed his resources to be very foolishly spent for the spiritual furtherance of his his son.
Hmm.
And so many Christian parents don't want to see their kids experience the pain of regret, and so they keep them from regret. But our Heavenly Father provides an example in the story. And, you want them to lose as little as they can, but sometimes um, some kids are not going to get it. And
Yeah,
so I don't believe that we need to treat all of our children exactly equally, because if one keeps messing up, sometimes they're just going to be not successful, and we vicariously are tempted as parents to live through our children. And so I've raised successful children, and they're going to be successful whether they want to or not, and they develop really bad habits, and yet the parents keep rescuing them. I'm just making the point that I believe that real love allows people to fail so that they can, learn real lessons, and then maybe they're given another chance, and so
100%.
I don't know how that applies to everybody, but I love the great examples that you're giving, but don't steal a lesson from them when they're going down a path that isn't very good. Try to
Absolutely.
preserve resources. But what's your response to that? I mean,
I love that. I think that's the only way to learn. That's the only reason why I'm a master problem solver today is because of the hell and the torment that I went through to be able to be a master problem solver today. And at the time I didn't understand it. I get it now.
yeah,
And so, we have to go through those things, especially, with parents and children. Yeah, we got to let them fall. We got to let them, if they choose to be prodigals, if they choose to make bad choices, we got to let them fall. We do the same thing with our boys. Bad choices, always there's a consequence connected to every choice, whether it's a good or bad one. And mommy and daddy aren't bailing you out with the bad consequences. You're going to have to figure that out on your own. That's just Bible. That's Bible. And I don't think that you learn any other way.
it's not Western American culture, but it is very biblical.
Yeah. Yeah.
So many parents do not want to let their kids go through difficult times. They want to protect them, and then you don't get to experience intergenerational wealth when you do that.
That's true. And because you don't know how to handle pressure, you don't know how to solve a
Right,
problem. You don't know
right,
how to let it
exactly.
burn until you figure it out or let God come through. And those are huge.
It's true.
Yeah. Well, we promised Larry um, the dinar conversation.
Oh,
So,
okay.
what does everybody want to know is when, Larry, when? And then on top of when, they ask me all the time, hey, have you talked to Larry? What did Larry say about where we can exchange it? Which I think we've talked about this before about your
All right.
dreams. But what are those two things that you say about that?
I'm gonna answer it, but and I'm going to answer it with the dream. I'm going to answer the most recent question first, and then I'm going to invite you on my show, and I want to just us talk about the dreams that we've had for the
Okay.
time that we're approaching, and it would be really interesting because there's some things that each of us know, not because anybody told us, but because God told us.
Yeah.
And you know, and I had two dreams. The only time in my life that I could maybe one other time I've had the same dream and then I wake up and then I go back to sleep and I have the same dream again. I had the same dream twice or a continuation of the dream after fully waking up and going back. And I was in a bank, somewhat like a Chase bank. It was a modern bank with those little cubicles, those little glass uh, office areas that are kind of all around. And, you know, that 3 years ago, they didn't exist anywhere. Now they're kind of everywhere. But
Yeah.
this was a freshly remodeled bank. And I went in, a really sharp looking guy, and I said, "Hey, do you exchange foreign currencies?" And he kind of got a curiosity. He kind of knew what I was saying, but you know, you feel crazy to say. And he goes, what foreign currencies are you talking about, Mr.?" And he looked at his screen because he goes, "Mr. Wood." I go, "Well, I'm talking about new foreign currencies that are really significant." "Well, which ones, Mr. Wood?" As he started to smile a little bit. I said, "Well, I have Iraqi dinar and Vietnamese dong." He goes, "Mr. Wood, I personally am responsible for the training that our whole staff just received. And I'm the one that gave the training, and I can personally assure you that this branch is going to be ready to fill the needs that you have regarding the Iraqi dinar and the Vietnamese dong when you need it. It hasn't happened yet, but when it does, come here and we're going to be here for you." And I appreciate it. It was like, you know, it was like concierge service at a five-star hotel. So, you know, it wasn't like any current American bank, but the thing is, in the dream, he was treating me like I was worth, you know, 10 million, 50, $100 million
Wow, like
because
he
the
really
people,
wanted your business.
well, the thing is, Lauren, if you believe in the dinar and the dong, you probably are going to be worth, you know, 10, 20, or $30 million, you know. And so he was giving me the high regard like for the hotel or the restaurant that I only eat at or stay at once a year, you know, and that's the way that he treated me. And I think that's the way that we're going to be treated when that happens. So that's where and when, Lauren, I'm going to admit something. And God has told me things, but you're talking to a guy who's experienced the prophetic. I clearly knew and saw that Donald Trump was going to win the 2020 vote. I
Yeah.
saw, God showed me in a vision. I wasn't sleeping. I was awake, and I remember it, you know, like getting ran over by a truck. I saw the vote counts represented to Donald Trump, that he absolutely crushed the American vote. So I knew he was going to win the election because he
Yeah.
did win the 2020 election in my mind. I know it. You know, not everybody else knew it yet, but then he didn't, we're told he didn't win the election, we were told.
Hmm.
And so I was crushed, but I never backed away from that. God showed me that he was going to win the vote. And
Right.
so um, I think, you know, I started down this big story and I just forgot what I was going to say. It's so funny.
Okay.
It was such a good story. You got to cut this part out. Holy smokes. What was I talking about?
Well, dinar, it probably was segueing into how you know about the dinar because you've seen these things.
Yeah. I've had but you asked me, okay, the question was, when is the dinar?
Yeah.
And so I've thought that because I knew that Donald Trump was going to win I knew that he won the 2020 election. I knew that he was going to be the president again. I had no idea there was a 4 year gap between that
Yeah, me
time.
neither.
So I knew that he was going to be our president again. And I was right. But my timing was really off.
Mine
And
too.
so my I know as much as I know things that, and I don't like to give financial advice, so I know that my wife and I are significantly invested in the dinar. It's a small percentage of our it's a very small percentage of our total investments, but it's a very significant amount of money. It's a really nice used car, that we've invested in dinar. So you don't buy a car and leave it in your safe if you don't if you don't think it's going to have future utility. I'm not
Right.
just talking about $300 or $400. And so I've thought it was going to be next month a number of years, in a row. But I will tell you, I think it will be before next month. I really
I
think
think
it's
we're so
almost
close. I
got to
think it's
happen so
this
close.
year.
Huh?
This year. It's what I really feel it like it's this year.
Well, I don't think I'm gonna kind of apply one thing. When you look at the prophetic thing, I think we're going to go through a multi-layered financial crisis that Trump is going to rescue America using the dinar. I think the dinar is being held in place by forces behind the scene. You can't tell me that Donald Trump doesn't know exactly when the dinar.
Of course
He's
he does.
he's a personal investor, and then our nation is significantly invested. He has said to
Do you think that Iraq should repay the American taxpayer for these bases,
Sure.
for
Well,
what we've done there?
You heard that from me,
Yeah,
okay?
I know. Should it?
I
But
said,
will we?
I said we built one of the world's most expensive airport facilities anywhere in the world. I mean, I wish we had it in New York. I wish we had it in Washington. We built runways that are 15,000 feet long. At LaGuardia, they're 7,000 feet long. In fact, I think they're 20,000 feet long over there, and deep, thick concrete and steel. Nobody ever built runways like this. Okay, it was way overbuilt, but that's okay. But we have billions of dollars into that. I said, if we leave, you got to pay us. If we leave, you have to pay us for embassies. You have to pay us for the money we put in.
How are you going to collect?
Well, we have a lot of their money right now. We have a lot of their money. We have $35 billion of their money right now sitting in an account. And I think they'll agree to pay. I think they'll agree to pay. Otherwise, we'll stay there.
Laura, I forgot her name. He said, and it's a documentable fact, America has purchased 35 billion. The connotation, the way I interpret it, America has spent $35 billion on dinar. How many
Oh,
trillions? He said that to what's her name? The Laura,
Ingram?
Not Laura Loomer. It's the older one.
Oh,
Um,
I don't know.
but anyway, I know that Donald Trump said America has spent $35 billion on
Yeah,
dinar.
so if we're that invested, he's not going to just let it go to garbage.
So what I believe he's doing is and Kim Clement alludes this. I get this conclusion from Kim Clement. He is going to let us experience this enormous mess that everything is going to collapse. And then I think he's going to use the dinar and people are going to go, well, that wasn't that bad. But then I don't think the collapse is just going to be done in 2 weeks. I think it will begin to happen and other countries do not have a leader that's godly, that has the assets of the dinar to save the nation. I
Mm-hmm.
think the sovereign wealth fund that he's talking about would be a good place to put it. He doesn't want evil, illicit people to have access to this enormous liquidity that's coming. So I think it's very soon. And I think, but it's not going to be in one day, in my opinion. I think we're going to see other countries. I think I talked about it last week in my own show. Um, the euro is going to get a haircut
Yeah.
because, and their credit is going to dry up. And then, as America's credit dries up, that's another one of the indicators. the the dinar comes as the Middle East says, America, your credit has dried up. And I think that we're really close to our credit drying up. And I think that the dinar will actually be used to redeem America's. It'll turn a horrendous situation into, oh, that was more of a speed bump than, falling off a cliff. But I still think everything has to unwind. You can't have all the assets of these evil companies held by grossly ungodly people. So he will use the dinar, in my opinion, to rescue us, but this thing still has to unwind over a number of months.
Well, I think that's good, guys. I hope that was helpful. That was a really good answer.
The I just want to say one thing too. I started the book that we wrote together about encouraging thing after encouraging thing because coming into the election, we just didn't know it was going to happen. But now, for like 12 or 14 days or 12 or 18 days, we just are starting to win and we're really seeing
Mhm.
victory. But we can't let short-term
Yeah.
emotion, because this is going to hit like a Mack truck. And so when the emotion hits us, we can't go, oh man, God lost it already. We only got to win. We've lost for, you know, we've lost for 4 years in a row. We finally win for 3 weeks and then everything goes to pot and God doesn't have it. No, it's going to seem like I think we're going down the 1929 depression.
Yeah.
Yet God's got it. There are people, and I've heard you say it on the show, many people thrived during the Depression. Not
They
a
did.
lot, but those were
I didn't
prepared.
know this, Larry, but the most multimillionaires were made during the Great Depression. It's in the history books. At any time in history, the most multimillionaires were made during the Great Depression. Now that's shocking, but it's true.
Right. And this time, Lauren, it's going to be the prophetic people full of faith. And I think that some of the God investments, I believe that God's going to reveal it in your heart and you're going to know, but you're not going to know intellectually always that, there's going to be your faith versus your rational mind. And, CNN and MSNBC are not going to confirm godly investments for you. If you're going to them for your source of wisdom, it's not going to work out. And so many great people are going to know what they should have done, but they don't actually have the faith to do it.
Yeah.
So
Going
those
to
of
them
us,
is like Jehoshaphat going to the sons of Ahab for alliance. Don't go to them.
well, and I almost feel worse for the people that know the truth, but then they don't act on it.
Yeah.
And so it's going to be difficult. And there's going to be so many people filled with regret. I mean, pain is a great teacher, though. So money is only part of life. It's not the most important thing in life, but it's nice to have. My brother says this as an NBA basketball player, and I've adapted it myself. He goes, I've been rich and I've been poor, and rich is better,
Yeah.
and I think you've been both and I've been both,
I've been
and
both.
but you can be very sad when you're very rich,
I like to
and
say it the same thing you just said. But I like to say it, money doesn't buy happiness, but it makes life a whole lot easier.
it gives you options. That's
Gives you
absolutely, and
options.
God wants the kingdom to have all the options we can imagine. Because with the Holy Spirit and lots of options, it's going to be amazing what's going to happen. So anyway.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Larry. I like to honor your time. It's been about an hour, so thank you for coming on. I really appreciate it. And also, if you want to know, guys, what we keep talking about, the book that we wrote, it's right here. And I put it down in the description below. Me and Larry co-authored this book together, and we have so many nuggets in here. Like, I was shocked, Larry, that you actually went all in and told them specific stocks that you were planning for the dinar and different stocks down to the name of the stocks that you were looking at during a
Well,
specific season. And
right. Yeah. And that's the thing. That's exactly right. Because I believe that Kim Clement prophesies that the stock market is going to totally crumble. Like I
yeah,
don't think people will be able to buy for a number of months on the exchanges.
wow.
So it's crazy things.
Yeah,
So
lots of good nuggets.
thank you so much for having me on. And I really appreciate it. Thank you so much, Lauren.
Well, we'll talk to you soon, Larry. I'll talk to you soon. So catch you next
Okay.
time.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.